Hey, ESL 106, we are back talking about outsourcing a little bit more. You had to read this article, you had to write a summary about this article, and I'm hoping with this video just to go over some of the main ideas, some of the supporting points, and to help you to understand the article and then summarize it well. So take a look in your book. Let's go together here to outsourcing. It's here on page 165. It starts. And I'm going to ask you a few questions and see if we can agree on some good answers. You can see from this first picture, talking about outsourcing, it's important just to get some definitions, right? So how is outsourcing defined in this article? What about these other words? Offshoring or insourcing, crowdsourcing is talked about in this article. And where do you see definitions in the article for all of these terms? So I'm going to show you where I saw some definitions. And they came from paragraph 1 mostly. Paragraph 1 really starts off defining outsourcing and offshoring. You can see that because the words are in italics. And when they're in italics like that, you know it's a term that they're going to talk about, try to define. So I get some good information there in paragraph 1. Moving to paragraph 7, I see that they talk about insourcing, and that's at the very bottom of the page, right? This new insourcing, talking about onshoring, right? It must be the opposite of outsourcing or offshoring. In paragraph 7, they're going to talk about the opposite movement. And then when they get to the end, paragraph 10, they bring up this topic of crowdsourcing, which we already have read about, we already know about, but they give us more of a definition there in paragraph 10. I see that I can find definitions in these sentences, and maybe you've already seen this as you looked at each paragraph and as you looked at these sentences. It's really important just to understand the terms, just to define the terms well. So let's go on. And as we look at what outsourcing, what this article was about, I know that starting with the definition, it's a way for companies to delegate tasks to independent contractors, external suppliers, right? It's just a matter of putting jobs outside of your company. That's what outsourcing is. But often, as you can see from my picture, outsourcing has the idea of going to other countries. And they use the word offshoring to really talk about pushing jobs out to other countries. The idea that labor might be less expensive in other places, we might save money, so let's offshore or outsource jobs to another country, to another place, to workers who will not be as expensive as the workers in our company. So thinking about that, I wonder where you found the main idea for this article. This article is talking about outsourcing. Is it positive about outsourcing? Is it negative about outsourcing? I can imagine some benefits, but I can also imagine some drawbacks when we're talking about pushing jobs out to other parts of the world. Where did you find some main idea sentences as you read this article? So here are a few main idea sentences that I found. The first is in paragraph 1. Outsourcing is prevalent in almost every business sector as a way for companies to delegate tasks to independent contractors and external suppliers. So really, it goes back to the definition of outsourcing, and I see that in the first sentence, and I realize that the rest of the article is going to talk about outsourcing and how businesses use it, how prevalent it is. At the end of this article, I see this sentence: experts predict that outsourcing will maintain a firm foothold in the corporate world. So it really talks about how prevalent and firm this practice is. It's not going away. But the rest of the article, how does it organize its supporting points to show us more about outsourcing? I wonder what you found as you were taking notes. Is this writer positive or negative about outsourcing? It's still not clear. Did you make a graphic organizer or an outline in order to look at the supporting points for this article? I used an outline that looks something like this. I know there are 3 sections. In the first section, there's a lot about the motivation and the impact, the effects, the results. Some are positive and some are negative, I find out, as I take notes in each of these paragraphs. As I look at the next section, I see a case study. And that means that General Motors uses outsourcing, and I can look at how they handled it in order to understand outsourcing better. They are a case study, a good example, a paradigm. I can see paragraph 6 and paragraph 7 both explain what happened at General Motors. And then when I get to the third section, it brings me to the recent strategies. What are the current practices when it comes to outsourcing? How do people think about it now? Guys, you will see on page 169 these 5 sentences, and after you create this outline, you will be able to match these main idea sentences to different paragraphs in the article. And I'll let you work that through. I'm going to ask you about these sentences when you do the assignment for this article. And you will also see on page 169, there are some detailed questions, right? A closer look asks you to look closely at each of these paragraphs. And here I'm just sharing with you my answers in case you want to check and see if you got the right answers. We're not going to look at each of these specifically. Here's the rest of the answers on page 170. Again, here are the paragraphs where I found these answers. These are details I had to read very carefully in order to understand these questions and answers. But what I want to look at with you is the skill review. So on page 171, your book says, let's try to find where these inferences are, how we can make these inferences based on the article. So they put it this way: what evidence can you see in the article? What does it say that allows us to make these inferences? Okay, so here, let's do this together. Number 1, I see they've done it for you, where it says many Americans lost their jobs when General Motors moved its automotive production to Mexico. And I know this is in paragraph 6. Where does it say that in paragraph 6? So if I look back there to paragraph 6, I'm going to see this. This is the quote, right, that they give me. I'll just put this here. In the 1980s, General Motors closed 10 American factories and moved its production to Mexico. And that gives me some evidence where I can make this inference. They closed American factories. That tells me that people lost their jobs in those factories, from those cities. They moved their production to Mexico. That tells me many Americans did not maintain their employment with GM. Here, let's do it again, guys. Take a look at number 2. GM's IT infrastructure was leading in inefficiency. It's not a good thing to lead in, right? Take a look at paragraph 7. Where does it say that? It doesn't say exactly that, but there's something in paragraph 7 that allows me to make that inference. What do you see in paragraph 7? So I looked at this sentence, and this sentence tells me relying on, let's see if I can make this easier to see. Good. Relying on old technology mainframe computing. GM experienced manufacturing slowdowns in its operations all over the globe. And that gave me the idea that it was leading in inefficiency. Its IT infrastructure was really not doing well. Let's look at number 3. It says the insourcing process at GM is gradual. Gradual. It means it's happening slowly. Where in paragraph 8 can I find that? Does it say that in paragraph 8? So I looked at this sentence. It expects to bring nearly 10,000 jobs back, that's insourcing, to the US over the next decade. And that gives me the idea that it's going to happen gradually. Over a 10-year period, they're going to bring 10,000 jobs back to the US. And number 4, some of the employees at overseas call centers have limited English. Okay, how do I know that based on paragraph 9? Where does it say that in paragraph 9? So I found this sentence. Many callers experience communication difficulties when they contact call centers. So they're talking about American callers having communication difficulties. And that gave me the idea that people that they're talking to may have limited English, maybe speaking English or not understanding everything they hear. And then number 5, though some companies are now bringing outsourced jobs back to headquarters, outsourcing remains a widespread practice. And let's see, where does it say that in paragraph 10? So I took this sentence alongside this insourcing trend. Many entrepreneurs and businesses continue to outsource. And that gave me the idea that this is continuing. So hopefully you're finding this helpful, guys. I hope that reading this article about outsourcing, you've gotten some good main ideas from each section about the advantages and disadvantages, the benefits, the drawbacks, about outsourcing and how it works. You're ready, of course, to do skill 9. And skill 9 is to take your notes and write a good summary of that article. And you're also ready to write a good response and discussion board. So your discussion board response is going to be to answer these questions. Is outsourcing beneficial or harmful as a business practice? Give an example to support your opinion. If you think it's harmful, show us an example. If you think it's beneficial, show us an example. Refer to a company other than GM. So what I'm asking you to do, again, is to go and find another article online that talks about outsourcing. Give us an example from that article and give us the link to that article when you write your thread. We want to be able to see